Okay, Dave. James Parker, thanks for sending me next swinging, mate. Right, so I just shot you a text message over. I haven't had a reply yet, so I'm going to presume the first lesson you're complaining that you're pulling the ball, right? So I'm going to everything I'm just looking at is still conducive with you pulling the ball, right? A shot that starts slightly left and finishes left, right? Might have a slight little curve on it, but you're missing your targets this side, right? You're not missing your targets this side, so you're missing your targets to the left. So everything I'm looking at definitely is conducive with that shot pattern, right? So let's dive in a little. Let's dive in deep and kind of diagnose these problems, right? So first thing, let's work on path, right? So the path as we're coming down through impact there, you can see how that club head is just very, very fractionally coming across the ball, just a couple of degrees, right? Not by much at all, so you're not far off at all, right? But a couple of degrees, 200 yards down the fairway, or 250 yards if you're hitting your driver or a long club, is a lot of yards to the left, right? If your face matches your path, that's quite a way left of the target, right? So the path is slightly out to in, right? So we've got a little path issue, still got a path issue. We've also got a face to path issue. So, what I'm looking at here through impact is, obviously there's a few things affect the face, right? But the main things are how you're controlling your wrists. So what I'm seeing through impact here is still a wrist action where the left wrist is breaking down this way, right? So your left wrist is bending instead of bowing or flexing, and then the right wrist is doing the opposite, right? So the right wrist is bowing or flexing, right? So that's the opposite of what we want. We want to try and bow. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about controlling your lead wrist, your left wrist, which will then hopefully control the right wrist, right? So all I'm saying is with that kind of wrist condition, that closes the face, which is going to produce the pull even more, right? Which is going to produce that left shot even more so, right? So they're the issues. They're the problems. Still the pull. I would agree with that. Those are the few little issues. So then, what are we going to decide to do to change it? All right. Well, the first thing that I would want to change with regards to the path, right? Let me pull that line back up there. That one goes through the elbow, right? First one's through the club. Second, the top line goes through the elbow. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to turn and extend more at P4, right? So, as we're going back, knees are working very nicely, right leg straightening, left leg's flexing. Hands are coming a little straight, but you kind of make up for it, up to P3. So from P1 to P2, a little straight, but then up to P3, not bad, right? Kind of going through the base of your right bicep, coming down, kind of through the middle of your right bicep. But you can see how that club head, as it comes down, the club head is just slightly above the top red line, right? So it's just very, very fractionally going to come across the ball, right? So what I'm saying is, when we look at it from this sort of angle and we get up to the top, what I'm looking at here at the top of the swing is big lack of turn in the shoulders, lack of turn in the hips. Hands are really quite low for the top of the backswing. And then when we look at how much you're... So we're lacking in turn. And what I'm saying is, if we can increase our turns, that's going to help us come at the ball a little bit more inside. You know, if we had 100 golfers, if I had 100 golfers in front of me, the 95% of the golfers who come across the ball are also going to struggle with their turns, right? Are also going to struggle with their turns. So this is just a pattern that we see, which produces that slightly over the top, not slightly over the top, but certainly a path which is coming slightly out to in, right? So that's the first thing. I want you to increase your turns at the top, and the way that we're going to do that is by extending more, right? So what do I mean by extending more? Well, first of all, that's going to help you get your hands further up, right? You're going to be able to get your hands higher. But what I mean by extending more is, if I draw a line from your right shoulder to your right hip, and then draw a line from your right hip to your right heel, right, you can see how you've got that little angle, right? Do that again. Maybe from there to there, from there to there, right? You see how you got that angle. When you look at a pro, let me get a good example up here, someone like Grant Waite. When they get to the top, what they've got from their right shoulder to their right hip and their right hip to their right heel is kind of like a straight line, right? And then you could go further into it, and as they come through, they've then got a straight line from their left foot to their left hip to their left shoulder, and this is kind of causes an X, right? And then you can go into what other people are talking about in the golf swing with regards to the X factor, right? That's a whole different subject, but that would be kind of relevant to what we're talking about, right? We want to extend all this right side of your body, and as you extend it, you'll be able to get your hands a lot higher. But as you're extending it, it's also going to increase your turns, right? If we look at his turns at this point, you can see there's his shoulders, there's his hips, there's your shoulders, and there's your hips, right? So this is what I mean by increasing your turns on your backswing, right? Another example would be Troy Mattison. Right, so that's a good example. Right, right shoulder, right hip, right heel. But the way you practice it, mate, is like this. I've got this video out. It's the elk drill. Right, this is Steve Elkington back in the day. Look what he's doing. Right, so he's doing the opposite. So he's really exaggerating it, but look at how long and extended this right side of his body is. Now, yes, he's letting his head move a little bit to the left, right, to increase his, to maybe think about his left tilt a little bit. But also look at the extension. Right, so you're going to the top, you've still got this sort of angle. Right, he's going to the top, and he's practicing extending. Boom. So that's what I want you to do. That extension, and you got to feel as though you've got a straight line from your right heel all the way up to your right hip, and then your right hip to your right shoulder. Right, and that's the best way to think about it. Right, so that's that's what I want you to do with regards to changing your movement pattern, which will then eventually, as a knock-on effect, help your path as well. Right, the more you turn, the more it's going to help you attack the ball from the inside. Right, that's what we want. That's what we want to get to. We want to get to a point where you're attacking the ball just very fractionally on the inside, rather than fractionally on the outside, right? You're going to hit the ball further as well, just by those impact conditions, right? It's going to change the spin loft, things like that. So that's the first thing. The next thing I want you to do is, and again we can pull up, maybe put a grunt weight. Next thing I want you to do is I want you to slide your hips more down into P6. And then what this is going to do is it's going to produce more right tilt, which then produces more of an into-out path. So what do I mean by that? Well, as you come down, right, now you do a good job staying centered on the backswing, but then what we're... let me draw some lines next to grunt weight so I can illustrate what we're talking about, right? So you do a good job staying centered, but then as we start down, yes, you're starting to slide your hips, right? And you can see how that left pocket starts to move outside the red line. But it's not enough. It's not enough, right? So, he gets up to the top there. Then he starts to not only slide his hips, but also push down under his left foot, right? So that's P5. That's you at P5. So you can see he's got a lot more of his left hip and his left pocket outside the green line. You've only got like a little bit. And then you get down into P6, which is shaft parallel with the ground, right? And again, you've only got a little bit of your left pocket out the way. He actually gets his belt buckle onto that green line. Look, so that's like a little right. So here's do this in green. There's your belt buckle, right? And there's his belt buckle, right? So he gets his belt buckle on that green line. So a lot more hip slide, right? But also, as you get some more hip slide and you keep your head pretty centered, what that's going to produce as well is more right tilt. So the more you slide your hips, the more you're going to get your upper spine, your upper body tilting slightly to the right. And then what we're looking for then is your left shoulder to be slightly above your right shoulder at that position, right? I could pull 100 golf pros up, every single one of them that plays golf for a living, at that point is going to have their right shoulder slightly above their left shoulder. Now, if we stop you at that point, your left shoulder is below your right shoulder, right? So that's what I want you to practice as well, mate. So it's going from P4, extending more, which is going to help you turn more. You're going to get your hands higher. But then as you start down, this is a drill by itself. You can practice this without hitting balls. You're practicing from P4 to P6, sliding your hips more. And then by that point, we want your shoulder a little bit, left shoulder a little bit higher. All right. So they're the couple of things that I want you to practice, which will affect the path. That will get your club moving more to the more from in to out, right? Turn and extend more up to the top, and then slide the hips more to eventually down into P6 to eventually get this shoulder higher, right? That's what you want to try and feel. You've got it down here, look, right? And then the next thing I want you to think about is the wrist, right? So those two things are going to affect the path. Now we need something to think about to affect the face, right? So as we come down, you can see, and we talked about this in your first lesson, just how your hands, through impact, this left wrist kind of bends that way, right? Which is the opposite of what we want. We want it to actually bow, right? So we want to feel as though if you're bowing it, then you start to keep it straighter, right there. And that's a good example, but an even better example, right? This is why you go around the internet and you get on YouTube and you download these guys with awesome golf swings, right? So this is Mac O'Grady, right? So you can see how at the top of the swing he's got his extended right shoulder to right hip to right heel, right? But then as he comes down, look how much he slides his hips. Again, good example. Good example. All right, so even by P6, he's got his belt buckle on that green line, look. And then at that position, look how high his shoulder is compared to what you are there. Right. And then through impact, if you watch his lead wrist, if you watch his left wrist, right, look how flat that is post impact. And look how he's starting to feel as though it's bowing, right? You're actually flexing your left wrist. And flexing it just means you're flexing your palm. You're flexing the palm of your wrist towards your arm, right? That's what it means. It's called palmar flexion, right? Just flexing your wrist, right? Whereas you're doing the opposite. You're letting your left wrist go this way. Okay, and then as you start to do that, you're not going to be able to do it hitting full shots. You've got to start it doing shorter swings, slower swings, and hit a few shots. And then your drill is just to hit some short shots and hold it around there. Now, if we stop you in this position again, you can see how you got that sort of angle. Right, when you start controlling your lead wrist like this, right, look at the angle. Right, so let's get rid of these. So there's your arm and club, there's his arm, and there's his club. Right, so when you do it, you're going to resemble a P8, which is right arm parallel with the ground. It's going to resemble something like a straight arm and shaft position. Right, these are just drills. These are just exercises for you to practice the position. Right, so that's your first drill. The next drill would be again practice swings from P4 to P6. Slide in the hips, right? Slide in the hips and pushing the left foot down. Right, so we all at the top of the swing, we already want to establish a little bit of bias under our lead foot at the top of the swing, right, at the top at P4. But then as we start down, we're pushing down even harder into the left foot and sliding the hips more, right? Because like we saw Grant Waite, his belt buckle's over here now, your belt buckle's still here. So we need to get the hips sliding more. And as you're doing that, right, as the hips are sliding more, you'll get more right tilt, which will help you get this shoulder higher as well. Right? So that's a drill in itself. So it's up to P4, extending and turning more. And then you practice. These are drills just without hitting shots. Then practicing coming down to P6. Right, P6 is shaft parallel with the ground, and you can see there how his hips have swayed more. He's got more right tilt, and because he's got more right tilt, his right shoulder is slightly higher. Right, the patterns that you see the pros at that point is about 20 degrees of right tilt. A P6, right? So to do that, the left shoulder obviously has to be higher, right? So that's your drill. That's your little exercise, right? Those are your little exercises. And then the other one that I think I spoke about already is the elk drill, right? That one's going to really help you extend and turn up to the top. But look how much he's turned these. Look how much he's turned his shoulders and hips. Right. So that's your other little exercise, mate. So if you practice those, and then obviously if you have any questions or comments, just shoot me an email or a text. If you want to jump on a call, I'll jump on a call if you have any questions. And yeah, I'll get back to you when I can. Cheers, Dave.